So welcome to this video. As you can see with our Blackmagic camera, we are recording some video with Chanel, and you're gonna learn a couple of different things in this video. Number one, you're gonna know what the difference is between 24 or 30 frames per second versus 60 and 120. But we're also gonna show you which exact settings on how to get the best slow motion. It's gonna be very important for you to understand how to capture very good slow motion, depending on what project you're utilizing it for. For us in particular, we're gonna be shooting at 120 frames per second, so you really need to understand the difference between capturing slow-mo and regular motion, something more natural like you're seeing now. So we'll start off with Chanel just moving her hand around. So that's gonna be 24 frames per second at 48 shutter speed. So what we're gonna have Chanel do, and again, 24 frames per second at 48 shutter, we're gonna have Chanel shoot the cards up in the air. When we play the footage back, we're gonna show you the difference between 24, 60, and 120. Now, some of you may only have a cell phone. That's fine. You can find a way to adjust your settings and do that accordingly. The goal is to be able to capture the cards and make them look the best in slow motion. That's what this is about. We're not gonna tell you what to do, but how to do it. So again, 24 frames per second, 48 shutter. Chanel, I just need you to shoot the cards up in the air. So if we play back the footage at half speed, it's not gonna look good. But when we get into 60 frames per second, it's gonna be that much better. So the reason for that is when we are playing back the footage, there's gonna be more frames every second, resulting in a smoother image. Where we get to 120 frames per second, it's going to look very crystal clear. So right now we're recording at 60 frames per second, but what we have to do now is change our shutter speed. So we're gonna do 120 shutter, and as you can see, the image is starting to get darker. So to combat that, we're gonna open up our aperture. So now we are at an f5.6 and then an f4. So actually we'll stay at an f5.6. So again, we wanna make sure our exposure is good, and we want to make sure that we can see her well. So right now we're recording at 60 frames. Chanel, shoot up the cards. Okay, perfect. So when we play that back, you can see that we have captured the cards in the air in 60 frames per second. Compare that to 24 frames per second. And then what we will do is go into 120 frames per second. For a lot of you, you may not have 60 frames per second, but if you do, most DSLRs will have it. I know that for a fact. But some of you may have something like a Blackmagic or a Sony camera, and that's gonna allow you to do beyond 60. For example, what we're gonna do is 120 in B-RAW. So B-RAW is going to be a raw mode. It will offer more dynamic range, more color in post-production, but ultimately we're gonna be able to utilize 120 frames per second. One main issue is that when we're recording in 120 is our card isn't going to be able to read and write the image fast enough because it's so much data coming in at one time. And then we also have the fact that we're gonna need a ton of light. So our ISO will be up. We're probably gonna have to be at an f2.8. And we're gonna go into Blackmagic RAW. We're gonna do an 8:1 compression, and we're gonna record at 2.6K. So another thing that might happen when you're recording, especially in something like slow motion, you will not be able to utilize your 4K sensor. So what this camera will do is actually crop into the sensor. So it's gonna be a little more difficult to get wide shots. So that's why we're on a 28. So now we have our frame, and what we're gonna do is make sure that we say action right away, because again, we're only gonna be able to record for about 6 seconds in real time. Okay, so action. Okay, perfect. There we go. So now if we check out 120, you can see how much more we've captured in slow motion. Our shutter's perfect. If you want, you could bring your shutter even higher, but again, you want to be able to see your image and expose properly. So it's a balance of all these different things. And here's an example of 24, of 60, and then an example of 120. So that's all we have for you in this video. We will see you in the next one.